Whole team. No!
Oh yeah.
Self-revive. They both had self-revives. What are those?
They do-
What?
What? What? I just didn't have any bullets in my gun. Hey guys, Drifter here. I hope you enjoyed that intro clip. That was me sweating about as much as I possibly could and still losing because all of the enemy team had self-revives and I had just landed from our gulag spawn. I had no ammo or anything, but it does highlight a clear difference in skill of opponents, which is the topic of today's video. Skill-based matchmaking. We are back for round 2 of skill-based matchmaking because some new information has come to light. The data and facts from this are all from a video that Exclusive Ace made just a few days ago. He did a massive skill-based matchmaking test in Warzone. It took about a week. I was talking to him during this time, but I wasn't really helping. I opted out of this because the last skill-based matchmaking test basically melted my brain, and to be quite honest, the topic can be depressing. So I just linked his video down there below in the description if you want to check it out and get the original report and data yourself. The short version is that Ace tested 4 accounts at different skill levels ranging from below average to literally Karma, who's one of the best Call of Duty players of all time. You can't get a better or higher skilled player than that. Then he used codtracker.gg to pull stats from players in the lobbies. This is one of the few stat websites, and they also track Warzone stats. And then finally, all of it was done in solos for simplicity. If you do it in squads, you have mixed skill lobbies, and we don't exactly know how that works yet, but solos is simple. You can isolate some variables. The results indicated that higher skilled players get higher skilled opponents, i.e. skill-based matchmaking. High skilled players also have a tendency to get more PC opponents, and people that change their names more frequently, and people that own base multiplayer. Low skill opponents tend to get a lot more free-to-play enemies, and a lot more console players, assuming slightly lower skill levels on both of those. I do want to point out that there was no indication of perfect one-to-one matching, especially on the extremely high skill end of things, like on Karma's account, because that's impossible. You can't find 150 people that play even half as good as Karma, so you can't, you know, we'll talk about it in a minute, but it's impossible to build a lobby of all like top 1% players because the pool is just too small. However, if you're good at Warzone, you will, on average, get players that are better than average. Your enemies will typically own multiplayer and have maxed it out, and you'll get a higher portion of PC players as well. Keep in mind this is an average measurement. Good players will still get regular enemies and a few baddies. There are no lobbies of 4.0 S&D Pubstar gods only, but your average opponent will be of a higher skill than the, well, lesser skilled accounts. And if you're low skill, if you're below average, you're going to get mostly below average opponents. The math behind the matchmaking indicated a stronger correlation in skill matching in Warzone than it did in our original testing in regular multiplayer. I actually had a PhD student pop in from Twitter to check out Ace's math, and he said that not only was it just, you know, casually, observably, visually significant, but it was statistically significant and extremely unlikely that we got this sample, or I didn't do anything, that he got this sample of higher skilled players just based on randomness. We have a statistical significance there, which is very important. And this is one of a few times where my in-game experience matches the same experience that the community has and the data that Ace collected. So I think it's safe to say when my experience, the community experience, and especially the facts, the science, the data all line up, that skill-based matchmaking is very real in Warzone. It's a real thing, which leads me to a discussion about developer statements regarding skill-based matchmaking, which at the reveal event, where a lot of YouTubers went, there was a question, you know, is there skill matching in Warzone? And what we were told is that there was absolutely no skill-based matchmaking in Warzone, that it was just an autofill as fast as possible based on region and ping, and they didn't want to have skill matching so they could just fill these lobbies really fast. This has been widely reported by a lot of other YouTubers besides myself, Charlie Intel, news websites, and others. However, no matter what anybody's public statement is, I always side with facts and studies. That makes me sound like Ben Shapiro to say that facts don't care about your feelings, but in this instance, it's very applicable. So what we were told about skill-based matchmaking at the reveal is clearly not correct. which leads to 3 different and all bad possibilities. The one that you're going to hear most frequently, number 1 today, is that we were lied to. That the devs knew that there was skill-based matchmaking and they just decided to lie to us as a community because we can't prove it. We're at home using like little Excel sheets and manual data entry to try to reverse engineer a complicated algorithm, and you really can't do that no matter how smart you are. I personally don't believe this one, that they just blatantly lied to us. My interactions with the developers at almost all of the studios have been very genuine and few bad ones. So I don't think that these are bad people that are just totally comfortable misleading the entire community. Option number 2 is that Infinity Ward had no choice and that Activision demands skill-based matchmaking, and it was put in sometime before launch. Skill-based matchmaking is, at the end of the day, designed to retain casual players for longer periods of time, thus hopefully selling more microtransactions in the long run. It also prevents people from having profoundly negative experiences and getting, like, just quitting early when they get bopped by a lobby of gods, which I guess is about player. Player retention is just the super important thing in gaming in general these days. And finally, generally having a good skill match, at least, somewhere in the right territory, makes for a fun round. Even really good players that complain about skill-based matchmaking would not have very much fun if every single game they played was just horrible enemies. They would get really bored really fast. So these could just be Activision-wide policies, and no studio, not just Call of Duty, but Overwatch or any of these other multiplayer games that Activision makes, they don't have any control over at all, and that Activision just says there's going to be skill-based matchmaking and you're going to deal with it. So I think it's entirely possible that they were forced to include skill-based matchmaking at a later time against their wishes. And then finally, number 3, this is probably the most likely one to me, and that's that just Infinity Ward doesn't know. My personal understanding of how matchmaking works in Call of Duty games is that all of that happens server-side and it's all handled by Demonware. Individual studios don't build their own matchmaking algorithms from scratch, but they can have some limited input and request on Demonware on how it's going to match and what it's going to do and what it prioritizes and stuff like that. And it could be that Demonware just did a plain Jane standard implementation of their matchmaking algorithm instead of a custom one, and that standard implementation will, of course, include skill-based matchmaking. This could have been done out of reasons of laziness, it could have been an error with the coding, or it could have been that they just got word from Activision and told them, hey, put skill matching in, and by the way, don't tell Infinity Ward about it because nobody will notice. You can kind of pick your poison on any of these: lying, corporate policy, misdirection, whatever, but at the end of the day, it shows disunity in management and an issue in communication with the players. I know that the studios are really reluctant to say anything about skill-based matchmaking because Call of Duty players will immediately get, honestly, like actually physically violent in many cases, and in other cases just try to find ways to abuse the system. So I understand the reluctance to engage in this conversation, but one of the very few engagements we got was misleading. It shouldn't be necessary for YouTubers to have to do college-level studies to try and figure out the basics of how a game works. That's just, I guess it's great for Ace and it's great for me and we make content, but it just shouldn't be necessary, And as for how badly this affects Warzone as a game, my personal opinion is that it doesn't, and I don't really care very much. I think that like a huge portion of people are going to be clumped near the middle, like the average, and very few of you will be on either extreme end to notice, and even because of the skill matching, as you move around, you shouldn't notice it that much because your enemies will be relatively the same. But there are, I enjoy the game mode, right? I enjoy Warzone as is, and the skill matching really hasn't hurt my fun in any noticeable way. I think that there are plenty of bad and good enemies to kill. In most every lobby, I tend to kill the bad guys first, and the good players are almost always sticking around at the end. The gulag system almost ensures that. And I do believe that some level of skill matching is necessary to protect new players on their journey to getting good so they don't just get bopped. It's not fun when you're new at a game and you join in and there's like Ninja and Shroud on the other team smurfing and you just get bopped. And it's also really not fun for them to smurf forever. So my opinion on this isn't that it ruins the game. I get that it's annoying for people, especially way on the far ends of the matchmaking spectrum, but for the majority of you, it shouldn't matter. I only have 2 really genuine concerns about this. Number 1 is that there is a lack of clear communication on what kind of game I'm playing. I would rather just be told, hey, there's super strict skill matching, and it's designed to make you miserable, than to have no information at all. That's not the case, but I would rather get bad news bluntly than be kind of misled. And number two, I do think that this makes the experience for mixed skill squads very difficult. So for those of you that have friends that are higher or lower skill than yourself and they join your squad and they immediately notice the games are a little bit weird, it probably goes something like this. If you're, average to not so great, it's probably not very fun to play with your sweaty friends, because every lobby is going to be, at least statistically speaking, significantly more difficult, and you are going to be useless. You are going to be the guy going down. You are going to be the guy asking for help. You're going to be struggling to keep up. It's going to be stressful. Or if you are the sweaty friend and you're inviting your more casual friends to play, your casual friends are going to feel really useless, and unless, I guess, you're a complete dick, you're going to try to emotionally support them, be like, it's okay, I got you, don't worry about it. And it kind of makes for a not so fun experience all around. That is my personal opinion. That's the biggest problem with it, and I hope that you enjoyed this video. I hope you learned something useful. I think Ace did all the actual learning and facts. I just hope you got some opinion and perspective on this. If you did, don't forget to like, favorite, and subscribe. Drifter out.